makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, French minister apologises to Liverpool fans over Champions League chaos. And Yannick Sinner happy to return this after a doping ban, but expectations are low for the Italian Open. Details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Thanks to Onele and Musibudi. They'll be back at the hour with headlines and a full sports update. Now, every morning after the 6 o'clock news, we try to give you a concise roundup of the stories that have played out across the continent in the past 24 hours, just to keep you up to date and informed. And to help us do this, we use our team of experts, analysts, reporters, and they provide a context for those stories for us. We begin today's Africa Roundup with this news. The International Court of Justice has dismissed Sudan's case against the United Arab Emirates, who they have been accusing of fueling genocide in Darfur by supplying weapons to paramilitary forces, saying that it lacked jurisdiction. The International Court of Justice President Judge Iyosawa Yuji delivered the judgment on Monday.
The court concludes from the foregoing that, having regard to the UAE's reservation to Article 9 of the Genocide Convention, this article cannot constitute prima facie for the jurisdiction of the court in the present case. It follows that the court, lacking prima facie jurisdiction to entertain Sudan's application, cannot indicate the provisional measures requested in order to protect the rights invoked in the application submitted by Sudan.
The M23 rebels have seized a strategic town in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo after fierce clashes with Congolese forces over the weekend. The seizure of Lunyasenge town is a violation of a ceasefire that was mediated by Qatar and signed by both warring sides last month. Chris Ochamringa has reports from Kinshasa.
Fighting erupted between the M23 rebels and Congolese forces backed by the Wazalendo militiamen near the shores of Lake Edward in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The death toll is still unknown, but many people are reported to have died. The rebels are now in control of the strategic town of Lunyasenge, which connects to the cities of Beni and Butembo by boat. The Congolese army has confirmed the seizure of the town. According to a statement released by the army spokesperson, the M23 rebels, supported by the Rwandan army, carried out the attack in flagrant violation of a recent ceasefire. But the rebels and government forces have continued fighting, forcing thousands of people to flee their homes.
The African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilakati, says that Africa should utilize agriculture in dealing with hunger and food security on the continent. Vilakati spoke to the SABC News on the sidelines of the launch of the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Programme Strategy and Action Plan in Johannesburg.
Today's event is very, very important in the African calendar, particularly at AUC. In one of the things is that we are looking at agriculture, which is the cornerstone of the development in Africa. Africa in general is agrarian, and therefore that means we've got to be pushing the agriculture agenda at all costs. Today is about domestication of the Kampala Declaration. It started in 2003, and unfortunately up to today we have not moved to the level where we would be saying we have reached Uhuru. But there are some countries that have progressed, which we are very excited about.
Staying in the country, South Africa's Democratic Alliance has referred to the Employment Equity Act as a race register. The party is taking the government and the Minister of Labour to court over what they refer to as a draconian law that is unconstitutional. DA Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zille believes government is introducing race quotas that are unconstitutional.
You can't just do anything in the name of redress and claim it is fair discrimination. There's a benchmark that has to be reached to qualify as fair discrimination under Section 9.2. And this Act fails that benchmark test 100%, we believe. And that is the primary constitutional argument that we will be making in court. We have a technical argument as well, which is that this Act should have been tagged under Section 76 of the Constitution because it has such a profound impact on many of the provinces.
Jury questioning got underway on Monday in the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial in the US, where the hip-hop mogul stands accused of sex trafficking charges that, if he's found guilty, could see him sent to prison for life. Freddie Joyner has the details.
The 55-year-old has pleaded not guilty to a 5-count indictment, charging him with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The goal of the U.S. District Judge is to seat a panel of 12 jurors and 6 alternates, who can be fair and impartial despite heavy media coverage of the case so far. Christina Marinakis is a jury consultant.
As a defense side, you're really wanting to get jurors that have not heard anything about this case or know very, very little about it, so that they come in with a truly blank slate and that hasn't had any type of bias, even unconscious bias from what they've heard in the media.
The jury will be anonymous, which is frequently the case in high-profile trials in which jurors could face threats or harassment if their identities are known.
Yeah, and that's how we come to the end of today's edition of Africa Roundup. We'll have more for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us, though. Coming up shortly, I'm going to be going to East Africa to get a sense of what's been making news in the region. And we'll be chatting to journalist Dennis Beru.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Aphungu a nyumba ya malamulo mu dziko la Malawi akuchita zokambirana zawo pa zinthu zosiyanasiyana pambuyo pa nyumbayi kutsegulidwa masiku apitawo, ndipo kondani Nyamasa ukali nafe pompano chiyambireni aphungu akukambirana masiku apitawo ndi zovuta ziti zomwe zachitika mu nyumba imeneyi ya malamulo.
Ndingathe kunena kuti state of national address imene a president Dr. Lazarus Chakwera akhala kuipereka mu nyumba ya malamulo imeneyi idautsa mpungwepungwe kwambiri nyumbayi, chifukwa pofika panopa mene ndikuyankhula pano ndiye kuti munafuna kubuka ndewu mnyumbayi. Leader of the house olemekezeka Richard Kimwendo Banda kuyimirira kuyankha koma mopsa mtima zimene amayankhula phungu oyimira ku Blantyre City South East Masama Suleiman kunena kuti sona imene adapereka president pa 14 February ikuonetsa kuti palibe chilichonse cha zero chimene chidaperekedwa mu sona imeneyi, akuti imene ayichotse.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa, bringing you the energy, news and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's time now to take a look at some of the top stories making headlines across East Africa, from the ongoing political controversy in Kenya to diplomatic tensions in the Horn of Africa. It's been quite a busy week in the region, and joining us now to unpack these developments is Dennis Beru, who's a journalist and the founder and team leader of the Association of Grassroots Journalists Kenya, and he joins us on the line. Dennis, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Peter Ndoro, Sowubona.
So good. It's so good to welcome you. Thank you so much for that. Dennis, let's start with the most talked about story in Kenya, I think, at the moment, the BBC documentary Blood Parliament. What's been the fallout since it aired, and why has it caused such a stir?
Thank you once again, Peter. Of course, the BBC Blood Parliament documentary, Kenyans are still talking about it because we've had a lot of developing stories around the documentary, and most of the people from the general public, they are still talking about this. And recently, we had the alleged filmmakers who were part of the documentary were arrested under very unclear circumstances. This has really brought a lot of criticism from different activists and non-governmental organizations because what people are talking about where the freedom of the speech because we all know that this is a democratic country where there is a freedom of speech, freedom of the media. And the other day when the world was commemorating the Press Freedom Day, this was one of the topics that people were talking about. And the filmmakers who were arrested, Nicholas Wambugu Gishui, Brian Adagala, Mark Karubiu, and Christopher Wamae, were later on released by government security apparatus. And we've been trying to reach out to relevant people to give us more information why the four were arrested, but that has not been fruitful. But according to the Law Society of Kenya, a lawyer, Ian Mutiso, said that the four were later on released, and there were no charges against them. So the point is, why arrest just filmmakers, or are we trying to silence the freedom of speech in this country? Because art is a very huge industry in this country, and so many people came out telling government that do not arrest these young people who are now trying to make a living. And remember, their equipment were also confiscated by the authorities.
Okay, let's stay in Kenya for the next story. Four police officers charged with crimes against humanity, and that was over the tragic death of a baby during the 2017 post-election protests. What more can you tell us about the case, and what's been the public reaction?
Of course, Peter Ndoro, this is a very sad story, especially on the issue of Baby Pendo. Baby Pendo is the famous Baby Pendo who was killed by police officers during 2017 after the IBC electoral and boundaries announced the win of the presidential election, and there were demos in major cities. One of them, that is Nairobi and Kisumu. And remember, Baby Pendo was killed in Kisumu. This is just a 6-year-old man who died in the hands of the rogue police officers. And it is a case that most of activists and Kenyan at large have been following since 2017. But it is so sad that the Director of Public Prosecution, DPP, has just dropped the murder charges against the 8 senior police officers who are linked to the murder of Pendo. And this has really brought a lot of condemnation from different stakeholders, including Kenya Human Rights Commission. So now the question that is lingering in our minds, where are we going to get justice for the little angel, the 6-month-old baby who died as a result of a bullet being lodged into her head. And the police officers named in this case, that is John Achengo Masham, Lina Kosgei, Cyprian Robi Wakio, and James Rono were all their charges were dropped. And I remember the 8 police officers, which the 4 were charged. They were facing charges of a murder, rape, and a criminal against humanity under the International Crimes Act, that is John Chengo Masha. So we are waiting to see whether there will be appeal from activist groups, because some of them have raised their concerns about this case. And I remember that it was also alleged that during the investigation period, the police officers, it is alleged that police officers broke into their homes and they had to lobby tear gas in the homes of these victims, and they even rape, women in turns. Some are also alleged that they were forced to pay between 500 and 200 Kenya shillings. And it is a horror kind of a movie as per the witnesses. But now, at the end of the day, the charges of the said police officers have been dropped. So that is the sad part of it. I don't know how we are going to get justice for baby Samantha Pendo.
Let's go to Somalia now. And I can only imagine this has a lot to do with the growing influence of China on the continent. Somalia's government has banned the use of Taiwanese passports. What's been the reaction in diplomatic circles to this? And I suppose it has to do with China.
This is very interesting, Peter, because we've seen the influence that China is trying to make, especially in Africa, East Africa. Remember, we had our president, that is William Ruto, visiting China, and out of the trip, he came out with a lot of goodies, a lot of contracts. And of course, we know the history between Taiwan and China. They have been in a very diplomatic, issues, and banning of Taiwanese passport by Somalia government. This is not a new thing, because as per the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they blamed that that is the United Nations resolution. They blamed the Chinese government trying to put more pressure on Somalia, that is Mogadishu, to make sure that the Taiwan do not have diplomatic ties with some of the African countries. Of course, Somalia being the latest country that has fallen into that trap. And I remember Somalia since 1991, during the time of Mohamed Said Barre regime, when the regime of Mohamed Said Barre came to an end, Somalia has never had a peace since then. And denying Taiwanese entry into Somalia is just diplomatic isolation, and China is trying to have more influence in Africa. And remember, China is trying to have more friends in Africa. Kenya is being one of them. Somalia now being one of them. And we are just waiting to see what will the Taiwanese government have to say about this. And remember, there are quite a number of Taiwanese are living and working in Somalia. And the question that we are all asking ourselves, what will happen to the Taiwanese who have legal visas and passports who are already in the country? Will they be chased away from the country? And I remember China and Taiwan recently, there were military drills in the Indian Ocean. So we're just waiting to see what will happen next after Somalia coming up with a directive.
All right, so perhaps briefly, if you can, Samia Suluhu Hassan, Tanzania's president, has received an award, Mother of the Nation, by the United Arab Emirates. What's been the reaction in Tanzania to this? Because there are some people saying that she's quite firm nowadays in the country.
Yeah, when we talk about Tanzania, we cannot forget mentioning Mama Suluhu. Of course, now being awarded the Mother of the Nation order, this is one of the highest honors by the UAE to a foreign country, especially Africa. Of course, we've been looking at Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan's style of leadership, which has been blamed. And I have seen some of the activists and political players from Tanzania, saying that how can we give that honor and an award to a leader who has been denying the opposition leaders' rights. I remember the official opposition leader of Tanzania has been in jail and is being charged with treason. Remember, election is coming in a few months, and this is just one of our ways of trying to show that Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan is a good leader. And remember, election is just around the corner. So this might be a calculated move. But remember, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed El Nahyan, that is the Deputy Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, during the meeting that was held by the two sides in the presence of Mahmoud Dhabit Kombo, and now the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Tanzania, said that this is just the beginning of the cooperation between the two countries, that is the UAE and Tanzania. And remember, an award. We're going to have to
leave it there, unfortunately. We're always running out of time, but thanks so much for your updates, Dennis. Asante ni nzuri sana kwako.
Shukrani sana na kuwa na siku njema.
Kwaheri.
Okay, asante.
All right, that's one of our regular contributors from East Africa, Dennis Beru, giving us a sense of the top stories in the region. It's time for your news headlines now. Good morning once again to you, Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Rwandan Foreign Affairs Minister Olivia Nduhungirehe says Kigali is in the early stages of talks with the Trump administration to accept migrants deported by the U.S. This comes after the U.S. indicated that it was looking for countries that would take in some of what they refer to as the most despicable human beings. A bodyguard for the Ugandan opposition politician Bobi Wine has been charged with aggravated robbery this days after the head of the military said he had abducted him. And in another legal matter, the Constitutional Court is today set to deliver judgment on whether South Africans should automatically lose their citizenship when they acquire the citizenship of another country. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's find out what's happening in the world of sports. Good morning, Musubudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start here. Kagiso Rabada is free to take on the cricket field again, having served a short ban. This after testing positive for the use of a recreational drug. This means that the South African bowling kingpin will be available to play in the World Test Championship final against Australia at Lord's in England next month. So the substance was found in Rabada's system during the SA20 competition on the 21st of January this year after the rained-out match between Rabada's My Cape Town as well as Durban Super Giants at Kingsmead Stadium in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province, according to a statement put forward by the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport on Monday. So the institute conducted the test. Rabada was randomly selected to undergo the test as a routine. After being made aware of the finding, Rabada accepted the outcome and did not request a B sample. Rabada tested positive for a substance of abuse and was subsequently notified of the allegation of his doping offence on the 1st of April. Now, the institute clarifies, or rather classifies, the following as substances of abuse: cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, as well as THC. Rabada's suspension began officially when he was notified on the 1st of April following his positive drugs test. On to this now. Zambia's national under-20 men's football team coach Boyd Mulwanda says they have worked very hard on their finishing as they prepare to face off with Tanzania in their third Group A match at the Total Energies CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Egypt today. The young Polo team are yet to win a game in this year's competition, kicking off with a goalless draw against Sierra Leone before drawing 0-0 against the host side Egypt. Mulwanda says the team is ready for their next assignment.
Yeah, I think we started preparing for the game against Tanzania with the boys. We did recovery. It was good that there were no injury concerns and everyone looked positive from yesterday's recovery. And today, this morning, we had a session where we were trying to work on our finishing and creating some chances for the team to get a win. I think so far so good. The boys are positive and have shown that they want to win this match.
Meanwhile, Zambia will stay in the hunt with 2 more points and will go into a final group game against Tanzania, needing a win to secure a knockout place. Mulwanda says this is a crucial game to win at all costs.
It's crucial. It's important for us. We just have to win so that we give ourselves hope to qualify to the quarterfinals. I think it's not an easy game because even Tanzania, they still believe that if they can win the last 2 games that they have, they will also qualify. So that makes it very tricky for us. But looking at the way the boys are responding to training, I think we are going to carry the day.
For the field now, France's former interior minister has apologized for the first time for the 2022 fiasco at the Stade de France, which saw Liverpool football supporters wrongly blamed for a riot. Now, Gerald Darmanin admitted that security arrangements for the Champions League final between Liverpool as well as Real Madrid were wrong, and that his first public remarks blaming England fans were a mistake. In their first comments after the problems, Darmanin as well as the police chief Didier Lamenant said the dangerous crash at the stadium was largely caused by Liverpool fans in possession of fake tickets. The claim was subsequently debunked in the independent report commissioned by UEFA. And finally, in tennis news, world number 1 Yannick Sinner said on Monday that he was heading into the Italian Open with low expectations as he makes his comeback after serving a 3-month doping ban. Now, Yannick Sinner is back on the tennis court at an official tournament for the first time in 3 months after his anti-doping suspension ended. Now, Sinner agreed a settlement with the World Anti-Doping Agency in February and began an immediate 3-month suspension after authorities accepted that the anabolic agent cluster ball had entered his system via from his physiotherapist. Now, the three-time Grand Slam champion, who has not played since winning the Australian Open in January, will hope now to leave the doping saga behind him and build momentum for the French Open, which runs from the 25th of May until the 8th of June. The Italian was cleared to return to trading officially on the 13th of April, with his suspension ending officially on the 4th of May. Despite missing out on 3 months' action, the 23-year-old was also assured of retaining the top ranking for his home tournament after his closest challenger, Alexander Zverev, crashed out early at the Monte Carlo Masters. Let's hear what Yannick Sinner had to say yesterday, addressing the media for the first time since his doping ban.
Well, it's for me personally good news that there are not the Grand Slams included. For sure, it's at some point, when you go on court, can go both ways, or nothing, or a lot. So there it's kind of agreement. It's I didn't want to do it in the beginning, so it was a bit not easy for me to accept it, because I know what really happened. But sometimes we have to choose the best in a very bad moment, and that's what we did. So it's all over now, so I'm happy to play tennis again.
All right, so that's a wrap from the sports desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Sadio, quelles sont les motivations derrière la décision du général Mamadi Doumbouya d'accorder la grâce présidentielle à Moussa Dadis Camara?
Alors, officiellement ici, c'est pour des raisons de santé, et puis le décret aussi a ajouté que c'est dans un élan de réconciliation nationale et c'est un cas social. Mais au-delà de ça, les journalistes y voient sous un angle politique. Les moins critiques estiment que c'est pour peut-être faciliter un petit peu la réconciliation que pourrait tenter aujourd'hui le CNSD.
Vue d'Afrique, du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's find out about the stories that matter in the arena of business and economics as we say good morning to Chanduko Legege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The International Monetary Fund will begin the fifth review of Egypt's $8 billion economic reform program, with a team scheduled to arrive in Cairo this week. The IMF board approved the fourth review on the 11th of March, unlocking a disbursement of $1.2 billion in a 46-month IMF loan program, first approved in 2022 and later expanded following the outbreak of fighting in Gaza. Egypt had been suffering from a severe shortage of foreign currency and inflation that peaked at 38% in September 2023. Canada's Fortuna Mining says it is eyeing expansion into Guinea after exiting Burkina Faso, where it faced regulatory instability and high security costs because of jihadist threats. Fortuna, which is not currently established in Guinea, is looking for gold mining opportunities there, conducting site visits and meeting with authorities. Michael Mbewe reports.
A portion of the mining company's growing exploration budget will go to Guinea, where there is a lot of room for discovery. The comments highlight how mining companies are responding to the changing landscape in West Africa, where military-run governments are revising mining codes. Burkina Faso and its neighbors Mali and Niger have all seen military officers seize power in coups since 2020.
South Africa's power utility Eskom can now run Quebec Unit 1 for another 20 years. This according to the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Hosea Ntsura Mokgopa. He has been speaking at the Eskom headquarters in Sandton, north of Johannesburg, where the power utility updated the nation on the state of electricity grid ahead of the winter season. He thanked Eskom head of generation, Bekingumalo, for this feat. Ramahuba says they aim to extend the life of Gobek Unit 2 as well.
And I'm also confident that we are going to deliver the same exceptional results when it comes to Gobek Unit number 2 that will meet the expectations and the requirements of the regulator.
South Africa's Trade, Industry and Competition Minister, Park Stau, says government is determined to continue with the establishment of the Transformation Fund despite criticism. Stau says there is urgency in addressing economic growth in South Africa. The minister was speaking at the sidelines of a business engagement session on the Transformation Fund in Pretoria.
Just to emphasize that the Transformation Fund is an aggregation of initiatives. It's not new money. It is actually an aggregation of resources that are already there, both in the public and the private sector, so that we're able to track what we're doing to maximize impact and value.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he will hit movies made in foreign countries with 100% tariffs as he ramps up trade disputes with nations around the world. Trump said he was authorizing the U.S. Department of Commerce and Trade representative to start the process to impose the levy because America's movie industry was dying a very fast death. He blamed a concerted effort by other countries that offer incentives to attract filmmakers and studios, which he described as a national security threat. One union has warned that Trump's remarks could spell a knockout blow to the industry where filmmakers have for years left Hollywood for destinations like the UK and Canada in search for lower costs. Let's have a look at financial indicators this morning. $1 in Nigeria is at 1,000 naira 604. In Botswana, 13 pula 48. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 485. Zambia, 27 kwacha 66. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 67. Russia, 81 rubles 14. India, 84 rupee 25. China, 71.20. South Africa, $1 is at 18 rand 31. $1 is at 75 pence to the British pound and 88 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,365, platinum at $973 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $61.24 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
At 44 minutes past 6 Central African time, let's see what the fact is for today, G20-wise, on this Tuesday, the 6th of May. Did you know that South Africa's G20 presidency takes place when the world is facing a series of overlapping and mutually reinforcing crises? UN says only 12% of the Sustainable Development Goals targets are currently on track, with approximately 50% needing more substantial progress and more than 30% of the SDGs having either stalled or reversed. The 2025 G20 summit, the first to be held on the African soil, is called to encourage a paradigm shift and accelerate the implementation of practical solutions to achieve the SDGs by 2030. That's our G20 fact this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Still with the G20, the second G20 Culture Working Group session is underway in Johannesburg, South Africa. The event, which kicked off on Monday, is being held under the G20 theme Solidarity, Equality, and Sustainability. The gathering forms part of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is the first to be hosted on the African continent. Nhlanhla Mahlangu picks up the story.
Under Brazil's presidency last year, the G20 Culture Working Group highlighted the relationship between education and culture. Taking over the presidency, South Africa has expanded on the cultural agenda. Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton Mackenzie, says culture today is an economic engine, a tool for justice, a foundation for innovation, and a beacon for sustainability.
We are going to advance some issues that has been put at the back burner, that has never been part of the G20 discussions or adequately ventilated and debated during G20 gatherings of this sort. Like, for instance, the repatriation of our art. Like, for instance, the repatriation of some of the bodies. Like, for instance, the non-payment for our content creators on the African soil, vis-a-vis the big payments the content creators get in the US and in Europe. We are here today to ventilate all those uncomfortable issues and to take it head on and not to sugarcoat it. We must get answers today.
South Africa's presidency comes after the African Union was admitted as a permanent member of the G20 when India held the presidency in 2023. Angela Martins from the African Union says the inclusion of culture as one of the working groups is commendable.
We are particularly happy with the South African presidency to the G20. It's the first one from the African continent, and with the work of the Culture Working Group, we really hope to request for support and see how the platform, the member states of the G20 can support issues related to restitution of cultural property, promotion of cultural and creative industries, the use of AI for cultural workers. I believe this is a very strong platform, and was said many times in the meeting, in the opening, it is critical that the world knows about us and also assists us in recovering looted heritage from the past.
Vinicius Gatla da Rosa, General Coordinator for International Affairs at the Ministry of Culture in Brazil, says culture provides pathways to collaborate and develop sustainable and balanced solutions to contemporary global challenges.
We also hope to make progress on the item of culture as a sustainable development goal in the next development agenda. So we think that culture must have a place of its own in that agenda, and culture contributes more than 3% to the GDP of our countries. It's an integral part of our development strategies, and we want to make sure that this is understood by all the leaders of the G20, and not only on the G20. The creative economy, it plays a really important role in this. So this is also one of the items of our priorities here set by the South African presidency.
Discussions are focusing on 4 critical priorities, which are safeguarding and restitution of cultural heritage, cultural policies in socio-economic strategies, digital transformation and cultural sustainability, as well as culture and climate change. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Hey there, this is Palisa Tau, part of the dynamic duo that gives you on the move right here on Channel Africa from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Africa time. Well, it's with your help for the past 2 years that we have been a multi-award winning show.
Finally, yeah, we're keeping it on the move in 2025. And yes, I'm the other half of the duo, Benjamin Mushatama, and we're going to keep you going with the great conversations. Turn it up.
Okay. On the Move comes back in 2025 to give you more of the content that made us a Maldo and to deliver that bold, boundary-pushing content that you love. And of course, giving you a ride through the 3 hours of news, views, and entertainment.
Every weekday from 9 to midday Central African time, right here on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Cool.
Let's go.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African time on Channel Africa.
Global electronic waste volumes are reaching unprecedented levels annually, having grown to 62 million tons of e-waste in 2022. These latest verified numbers are an 82% increase compared to the 2010 volumes. Yet, only 22% of this waste was recycled through formal channels in 2022. with the demand for new advancements contributing to fast-changing technological shifts, the global amount of generated e-waste is expected to skyrocket to 74 million tons by 2030. The United Nations, or UN, defines e-waste as any discarded product with a battery or plug and features toxic or hazardous substances such as mercury that can pose severe risk to human and environmental health. For more on this issue, we joined on the line by Aisha Lotta, the spokesperson for Waste, Electrical and Electronic Equipment, or WEEE, a central platform dedicated to raising awareness about responsible consumption, reuse, recovery and recycling of e-waste in South Africa. Aisha, thank you for joining us. How are you this morning?
Thank you so much for having me, Asanda. I'm good.
Awesome. So by definition, as we say in our introduction, e-waste is any discarded product with a battery or plug that features toxic or hazardous substances such as mercury. Can you give us actual examples of some products?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm sure you're actually looking at some right now, and you're in the room that you're in. You know, you've got your laptops, your computers in general, your kettles. I don't know if I can survive without getting up and having a cup of tea. All of these necessities, you know, it's we've become so dependent on our electronics. Everything from your hair dryers, your drills that we use in our with our DIY workshop. You know, everything that plugs in, essentially. This also includes your batteries and your solar panels. I think that, you know, we have a very specific definition, but when it comes to e-waste in general, we have to also look at our light bulbs and our batteries and cables in general. So it's a huge collection of different components that we need to consider when we think of e-waste in South Africa.
Right. When I saw this, I remembered just the other day that when I saw that we're going to be having this chat, the other day we were asked as parents at my daughter's school to collect and give them these products for collection. So what actually happens to the collected e-waste? How is it recycled?
So in South Africa, we have some leading recyclers, and basically what we do is we try and get as much as possible together through these kinds of collection drives, and then start off with assessing whether the electronic component can be reused. So the first hope is that we can fix the item, and it can be refurbished, and then it can be sold on, because that's really our first best option in terms of waste management when it comes to e-waste, is we want to reuse it for as long as possible. But of course, you know, sometimes it's just impossible to make it functional again, especially if it's not particularly I would say exciting for the consumer. I think some of your older electronics, even though they work really well, they're just not seen as fashionable anymore. So when it comes to those kinds of equipment, it's also they go through a component harvesting. So any functional part that they can recover from those from the equipment, and that has any kind of functional worth, that will then be recovered. And then after that, you kind of go into your more dismantling, your recycling path. So that's where electronic devices are taken apart. They are put into different value fractions. At this point, we have a lot of what we call cherry picking. And cherry picking is basically where we have the recycling process, but only specific valuable components are taken. So it's the metals, it's the printed circuit boards that has gold, and any kind of copper that you can get from your cables. So we don't necessarily have a lot of responsible management of the entire equipment, because we want to get people focus in on the shiny things, you know.
Okay.
But actually we need to consider the whole equipment, because about the majority of your electronics is actually plastic. You know, it's a specific type of plastic that is treated to be flame retardant. So it will stop the kind of breakdown, but it will also create this long-term serious health risk because of that plastic breakdown slowly over time. So there's various different components. It's a very difficult waste stream. It's not as simple as just a can, which is just something that is very reusable. An aluminium can is something that you can recycle almost indefinitely, but a laptop is not the same.
Yeah. So can one set up their own recycling station at home for e-waste, as in the case of the usual products that we recycle or reuse, like paper, plastic, food waste, or glass? Or is it a bit too specialized and technical?
To do it safely and to be sure that you're doing it in a way that doesn't harm the environment, and especially the handler, you should preferably hand the whole equipment over to a specialized processor. They will then pay you for that service of collection. And that is really an important point, is that you're not losing out. But at e-waste level, it really is far more challenging to do the job properly. Even our big recyclers, it's a challenge because of how each equipment is designed differently. They're constantly changing. You're getting a variation of different components within a product. So it's a little bit more complicated. I know that we do have a hope that there is this kind of urban mining where you can mine the electronics and kind of have this extraction of gold and silver and copper in your backyard, which some people do that. But it is incredibly dangerous for that person, because you're using hazardous chemicals and it impacts your environment, it impacts your family, and it's better to just hand it over to the professionals who will pay you, and you'll ensure that it's done in an environmentally sound manner.
So who do we hand over our e-waste to? Besides the school drives, I guess, because that's actually easier.
Yeah, no, I mean, what is most convenient is definitely what we are trying to find out. So, usually what I do is I kind of keep my electronics for a period, get a proper box full, and then I will go to my closest e-waste recycler. You can find the closest e-waste recycler near you through the WeRSA website. So that we have various different maps that clarify where is it most convenient for you to drop off your electronics.
So that's www.weee.co.za.
So it's WEEEARESA. So it's WeRSA.org.
Well, thank you so much, Aisha. We appreciate your time again this morning.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Aisha Lotta, spokesperson at WEEE. And that's the first hour of Africa Rise and Shine. Good morning as we enter the next one. It's 7 o'clock Central African time.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And so much to look forward to in this next hour. We'll give you the details shortly. But first, very importantly, it's time for the news with Onelin Sinsi and your news headlines with your sports headlines with Musubudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Rwandan Foreign Affairs Minister Olivia Nduhungihere says Kigali is in the early stages of talks with the Trump administration to accept migrants deported by the U.S. This comes after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington was looking for countries that would take in some of what they refer to as the most despicable human beings. Rwanda had previously also agreed to accept migrants deported by the United Kingdom. But the UK abandoned the program, which faced legal challenges after Labour Party took over last year. Didaba Tsotetsi reports.
Rwandan Foreign Affairs Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe has disclosed to local TV station that Kigali is in the spirit of giving another chance to migrants who have problems around the world. He says that they are engaging with the US and it's too early to predict their outcome. Since returning to the White House, US President Donald Trump has focused on pushing for the removal of undocumented migrants with the promise of mass deportations. But Rwanda has previously been criticized for its human rights record, including the risk that those sent to the East African nation could be deported again to countries where they may face danger. However, Rwanda says it is a safe place for refugees.
There's been a drone attack on the Sudanese port city of Port Sudan for a third consecutive day. The Sudanese media says the drones targeted the main international airport. It is believed the rapid support forces carried out the drone attacks, which started on Sunday. The BBC's Andrew Ochieng.
Local media reported that there had been explosions near the civilian terminal at Port Sudan's international airport and huge fires can be seen. There are reports that several scheduled flights have been cancelled. Previous attacks on the city have been blamed on the rapid support forces who are in a civil war with the Sudanese army. On Monday, Sudan's energy minister said the RSF had deliberately bombed an oil depot in the city to paralyze life there. Over 2 years of conflict, Port Sudan has been a safe haven until now. The Red Sea port had served as the base of Sudan's military government and the main center for humanitarian support.
A bodyguard for the Ugandan opposition politician Bobi Wine has been charged with aggravated robbery. This is days after the head of the military said he had abducted him. The lawyer representing the bodyguard, Eddie Mutwe, said his client had been tortured. The BBC's Will Ross reports.
Ugandan security operatives tried to shield Eddie Mutwe and prevent the media seeing him as he was brought to court. But videos showed Bobi Wine's bodyguard barefoot and hardly able to walk. His lawyer says his client was beaten all over the body and was given electric shocks whilst in military custody. Last week, President Yoweri Museveni's son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, posted on social media that he'd detained Eddie Mutwe. The army chief said he'd been shaved and that he planned to castrate him. It's unlikely to be a coincidence that Uganda's elections are a few months away.
In another legal matter, the Constitutional Court is today set to deliver judgment on whether South Africans should automatically lose their citizenship when they acquire the citizenship of another country. The case relates to a section of the South African Citizenship Act, which stipulates that South Africans will lose their citizenship if they voluntarily acquire another nationality, unless they apply for and obtain retention from the Home Affairs Minister. The Supreme Court of Appeals previously ruled that the section of the Act was unconstitutional. The Constitutional Court is today expected to determine whether this ruling should be upheld. Lastly, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has arrived in Washington ahead of a planned meeting with President Donald Trump today. Trump earlier told reporters at the White House that he wasn't sure what Carney wanted to see him about. The meeting could be tense following Trump's repeated suggestions that Canada should become the 51st American state. The BBC's Sarah Smith reports.
Tariffs will be high on the agenda as Canada's already feeling the effects of 25% import taxes on vehicles, car parts, steel and aluminium, putting thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. I guess he wants to make a deal, was all Donald Trump had to say when he was asked what would be on the agenda. Before their official meeting begins, the two men will be seen seated together in the Oval Office, an experience that other world leaders have found can be either extremely uncomfortable or pleasantly welcoming. Mark Carney will need to be prepared for both scenarios.
Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Kagiso Rabada free to take to the cricket field again this after serving a short ban after testing positive for the use of a recreational drug. And Zambia look to qualify for the quarterfinals of the ongoing AFCON Under-20 tournament in Egypt. I have details of these and other stories at 7:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's thank our team now. Thanks to our technical producer, Tato Maporoma. Social media is Talent Butelezi. On production is Slengi Wemabaso, Joey Lehodi, and Pumudzo Ramakadza. On news, Onele Nsinzi. Sports, Musibudi Makura. And economics news brought to you by Chanduko Ligege. And our first story for this hour on Rise and Shine. South Africa's Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, has vowed to put strong anti-corruption measures in place to safeguard the proposed transformation fund. The fund aims to raise nearly $5.4 billion over the next 5 years through voluntary contributions from both the public and private sectors. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says collaboration between the public and private sectors is key to tackling South Africa's economic challenges. Channel Africa business reporter Innocent Samusa has more.
South Africa's Minister of Trade and Industry, Pak Stau, says the core mission of the nearly $5.4 billion Transformation Fund is to support black-owned businesses and empower them to play a central role in driving the country's economic growth.
This fund is designed to expedite progress. It will prioritize high-impact projects that address urgent economic and societal challenges, whether modernizing critical infrastructure, scaling renewable energy solutions, or empowering industries to adopt advanced technologies. Second, the fund will ensure that growth is equitable. We will direct resources towards initiatives that dismantle barriers to opportunity, geographic, demographic, and socio-economic.
Meanwhile, Deputy President Paul Mashatile emphasized the importance of strong collaboration between the public and private sectors to deliver real lasting impact.
Program Director, we must collaborate to eliminate structural barriers and establish equitable opportunities for all. We must focus on industrial policy, infrastructure investments, and social grants to foster inclusive growth and protect the most vulnerable in our society. Regardless of the challenges that persist, we have, through our democratic dispensation, traversed the journey of economic redress together, knowing the significance of inclusive development and growth for South Africa's economy.
Mineral Resources and Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe also weighed in, reflecting on the need for deeper transformation within the mining sector.
That mining is the most transforming sector in the economy. I want you to demystify that and say it's not true. It is a sector where women were not allowed to work. Okay. Women were not allowed until something dramatic happened and they were employed. Today, about 76,000 miners are female. That is transformation. Number two, in a research we conducted 3 years ago, we discovered that all major mining companies do not have less than 50% of black managers at all levels.
Representing Business South Africa, Busi Mavuso spoke candidly about the transformation journey in the country and outlined key areas where she believes government can focus its efforts to accelerate progress.
What capacity is there in the development sector to support enterprise development, and how would the proposed fund attract and develop that capacity? Why have other public sector efforts faced constraints, and how will the fund be different? What forms of funding will the fund provide across equity and debt? What would be the target returns or loss ratios of such funding instruments? What risk management approach would the fund deploy, and what resources would it require to ensure appropriate risk management? What sectors, development stage, and geographies would it target? How would funders be able to direct their contributions to these targets? I think we shouldn't fall foul of being excited about numbers. 100 billion rands looks like a very attractive number, but what are we hoping to achieve with it? What are we solving for?
It's clear that transformation remains a central theme in South Africa's economic agenda, and while bold funding commitments are being made, all eyes will be on how they are implemented. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samos in Pretoria.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The head of South Africa's Special Investigating Unit, the SIU, Advocate Andy Mutibi, says that the agency is facing growing threats against its investigators. The SIU is a government institution tasked with probing serious allegations of corruption, malpractice and maladministration within state institutions. It also works to recover public funds lost to corruption and wrongdoing. Mutibi was speaking at the opening of a four-day 15th Commonwealth Regional Conference of Heads of Anti-Corruption Agencies in Africa, currently underway in Cape Town. And the conference is being held under the theme Enhancing Inclusive Participation of State and Non-State Actors to Prevent and Combat Corruption. Celine Merrington has more.
Different corruption busters from at least 21 countries are under one roof to discuss ways to combat and prevent corruption. And while they are trying to make a dent, the pushback is also getting stronger. Mutibi says the SIU is often served with court papers in an effort to get them to drop an investigation, and in other situations, the threat becomes more severe.
In other instances, it can really be almost deadly. We have experienced it in the lottery investigations, where our investigators were actually receiving threats, and we had to make sure that we arrange protection. We have seen it in our investigations, in the Fort Hare investigations. Our investigators were threatened.
The SIU has officially launched its academy. Mutibi says it's been expanded to strengthen the unit and several government institutions.
The academy focuses on anti-corruption training programs. We really just singling out cyber because we know that the corrupt really use the cyberspace to commit corruption, right? So we want to make sure that from a cyber perspective, we strengthen the capacity of our investigators, of our institutions. So from a training perspective, we open the training to South Africa, government, state institutions, including state-owned entities, law enforcement. We also speaking to other stakeholders, like the civil society and so on.
Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mamoloko Kubai says as cyber crimes continue across the globe, law enforcement must also incorporate modern technology in their investigation methods.
Through artificial intelligence, vast amounts of data can be easily analyzed and patterns can be detected much faster. By using sophisticated algorithms, AI systems are trained to identify and recognize patterns of suspicious spending, detect sudden shifts in financial behavior, and highlight inconsistent behavior that may indicate bribery, fraud, or money laundering.
The four-day conference will also be addressed by former Chief Justice Raymond Zondo and Public Protector Koleka Kaleka. Celine Merrington, Cape Town.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous étions en train de savourer la chanson Démocratie.
Démocratie.
Ça veut dire quoi?
Démocratie, déjà, ça dérive de démocratie,
Ah bon?
qui est le régime dans lequel nous sommes, dans notre pays. Mais je plutôt pensé que nous sommes plutôt dans une démocratie.
Pourquoi?
Où il y a une cruauté tellement... une méchanceté des dirigeants envers la population. En fait, dans cette chanson, je suis en train de blâmer tout le monde. Je blâme et les dirigeants, qui pour moi sont des démocrates.
Oh, je suis maintenant en train de comprendre. Donc, démocratie. Oh!
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The African Union Commission, in partnership with the African Union Development Agency, New Partnership for Africa's Development, is officially launching the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, or CAADP, Strategy and Action Plan 2026 to 2035. The three-day event is being hosted by the Government of South Africa in the city of Johannesburg. Among the key participants is the Africa Food Systems Parliamentary Network, or AFSPAN. Joining us to discuss their participation is Dr. Dora Silia, former Member of Parliament in Zambia and member of the Africa Food Systems Parliamentary Network. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this morning?
I'm very well. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to the program.
Our pleasure. So AFSPAN works with agri-food systems transformation in Africa. Please give us more understanding in terms of the legislative, budgetary and representative work you do.
AFSPAN was formed about a year ago, and it is a group of all members of parliament and past members of parliament, such as myself, who are interested in food issues in Africa, in agricultural development in Africa, in poverty alleviation in Africa, in investment in the agriculture value chain in Africa. And the platform brings together these members of parliament for one reason, first of all, and that is to ensure that the commitments made at continental level, particularly the CAADP, which is the African Agriculture Development Program, first began in 2003, reaffirmed in 2014, and again reaffirmed in 2025 January in Kampala. It is now being called the CAADP 3. It's a 10-year program asking African governments to commit 10% of their budgets to agriculture, to have growth in agriculture at 6%, to support research and development in agriculture at 1% of national governments. The members of parliament in the African Food Systems Parliamentary Network are saying, we have seen these things before, we have heard these things before, we have to do something different because poverty in our countries is very, very high. In my own country, Zambia, rural development is over 60-70%. So we are saying we need visibility for CAADP 3, 2026 to 2035. And as MPs, we came together and said, let's provide ourselves a working group, a working platform, provide ourselves a constitution to keep this matter visible, to urge our nationals to appreciate that agriculture is critical, to urge our government to appreciate that budgeting is a moral right. Proper budgeting to agriculture must be a moral right, that members of parliament are constitutionally mandated to keep this matter alive.
As member of the Africa Food Systems Parliamentary Network, who do you believe should be the main target group on how the implementation and oversight of these agricultural policies across the continent are applied?
First of all, we congratulate the new Commissioner for Agriculture, the AU Commissioner, Honorable Moses Birakati, a former Agriculture Minister himself. Clearly, policy in terms of agriculture is driven by government through the mandate given to them in the general or national elections every electoral cycle. But at the same time, the business of allocating resources to drive that policy, to implement that policy in agriculture is through parliament. And for a long time, we have felt that while governments make these commitments, especially at the AU level, to support agriculture, to transform agriculture, to transform agri-food systems in this country, because agriculture is just not production. It is making sure that we have food that is nutritious. It is making sure that our people understand what health diets are, because health people contribute to an economy. It is making sure that we increase intra-trade among ourselves. In the SADC region, intra-trade in agriculture is just 5%. So while governments lead through the mandate they get from the people who vote for them, Parliament is at the heart of this process, because the members of parliament are also voted by the people, and that is where across political parties that the public, the instrument in terms of public expenditure is discussed and resources allocated to agriculture. We have committed as Africans 10% minimum of the national budget should go to agriculture. And since 2003, when the Comprehensive Agriculture Development Program, CADIP, began, almost all the countries have failed to meet that commitment.
Why do you think, let's go back to one of the comments made by African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilakati, during the gathering, who said that Africa should use agriculture to tackle hunger and food security on the continent. Why do you think our agricultural activity on the continent has not yet managed to solve these issues of hunger and food insecurity?
Well, I think we have to change the narrative. We have been saying as the AFSPAN, we have to change the narrative. Agriculture should not be seen as that business for those poor people. Agriculture is a hanging fruit in Africa for jobs, for quality jobs. The value chain of agriculture is beyond the farm gate, even for small farm holders. Agriculture has a very long value chain in terms of logistics, storage, processing, distribution, trade, and with the free trade area recently launched in Africa, we have to make sure that we bring back agriculture into the everyday narrative. This is why we are in Johannesburg to domesticate the objectives of CADIP now. And one of them is enhanced production, increased commitment. Governments in January this year in Kampala agreed to raise $100 billion from 2026 to 2035 to invest in agriculture at various levels of value of the value chain. And so we must make sure that the narrative changes. It must be mainstream. Interviews such as this that I'm doing with you must become the normal. We are always hearing about meetings every day about our high value minerals in Africa, about the energy issues in Africa, about infrastructure development in Africa. But we must keep agriculture issues relevant in the news, because the majority of citizens in Africa, one way or another, earn from agriculture. And it means that it is a very, very critical sector for our people. We must keep it alive. And this is why the members of parliament felt that, look, yes, we have the Pan-African Parliament, which reflects our parliament, our home parliament, and looks at a number of issues. But let us have a platform that looks only at agriculture, because that is how important the sector is to the people of Africa. Food security is national security, it's Africa's security. It is what will really create the opportunities for the future. And we must leverage the demographic gains expected from the young people of Africa, from the critical minerals, from the energy sector, that earnings from those sectors must make sure that they are directed towards agriculture, because it would be a shame that after another 10 years, we are saying, yes, people were making money in energy, people were making money in minerals, but agriculture remained behind. And yet, that is where the majority of our people expect to earn, not just to feed, but to even make a living.
Talking of demographics, are the voices of rural communities reflected in your belief in the new strategy, the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program Strategy and Action Plan?
Yes, of course. Rural Africa is where the majority of agriculture activities take place. There are very many small farmers in my own country, Zambia. It is the 1.5 million small farmers who are actually the backbone of the agriculture sector. And yet, across the continent, in the narrative, it is always those peasant farmers, those poor people. When it comes to budgeting in Parliament, where I was for almost 18 years, they take the back seat because they're the last to have a voice in terms of consideration for agricultural support, and yet those are the people who vote most governments into office, who vote most members of parliament into office. So we are saying, let us change the narrative. ASPAN can't do this by itself. the media, civil society, the executive, and of course, members of parliament. We all have to know what is important. Agriculture is important, and it requires a transformation beyond meetings, beyond launches. It is time, we are saying, together with the African Union, and we are happy that we met with the commissioner yesterday, Vilakati, for a bilateral, that we have to keep agriculture relevant, visible, and make sure parliaments, when we are budgeting, we remember that agriculture is where most of our people earn their living from, their food, and most of all, their earnings from.
Talking of support from different bodies to make this agenda move forward, what role can the Food and Agricultural Organization, or the FAO, play in support of such initiatives as the CAADP?
One of the things that we have been doing very actively as AFSPAN is clearly as a lobby group, as a platform, to make sure that we engage with as many stakeholders as possible. And our executive chairman, who's the member of parliament from Ghana, Honorable Joso, as well as our vice chairman in Tanzania, and our executive secretary, Honorable Jerome Lusua from Congo Brazzaville. They have done a lot of work in the last 1 year since we began to meet as many stakeholders as possible, including the FAO. Yesterday, the team that is here in South Africa, we also met with a FAO representative here in South Africa, and we're happy to hear that the FAO itself has recognized the important role members of parliament are playing, and are hoping to continue to coordinate and maybe have a continental meeting where you have as many members of parliament as possible, not just from the continent, but globally, that members of parliament are not bystanders. They should shape the future of agriculture because they have the capacity to decide to allocate enough resources. If the majority of Africans are in agriculture, then in a democratic system, the signal to those who are in parliament should be that the majority would prefer to have enough resources committed to agriculture. And so we want the voice of the members of parliament to work with the voices of all stakeholders, including the Food and Agriculture Organization, whom we've had meetings with already, and many others. Let me take this opportunity to thank the Zero Hunger Coalition, to thank Chamber Center, to thank CARE International, and even Oxfam, who are working very, very closely with the African Food Systems Parliamentary Network to make sure that we are visible, we are relevant, and our messages continue to reach as many people as possible.
Well, let's leave it there for now then, and I guess that's what you're hoping will emerge from this week's launch in terms of moving forward and sustaining the momentum that's already in motion of the CAADP 2026-2035, and hoping you are enjoying our city, Joburg.
Oh yes, chilly, but we are happy to be here, and this is a momentous occasion. We have to domesticate CAADP in each nation, because while it's a continental decision, the implementation has to be at national level.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks so much again, Doctor. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, my lady. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Dr. Dora Salia is former Member of Parliament in Zambia and member of the Africa Food Systems Parliamentary Network, or AFSPAN, and they are in the country for this new partnership that's launching a comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, CAADP Strategy and Action Plan 2026 to 2035. 7:30 Central African Time it is. Let's say good morning for our news headlines to Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Rwandan Foreign Affairs Minister Olivia Nduhungihere says Kigali is in the early stages of talks with the Trump administration to accept migrants deported by the U.S. This comes after the U.S. indicated that it was looking for countries that would take in some of what they refer to as the most despicable human beings. There's been a drone attack on the Sudanese port city of Port Sudan for a third consecutive day. The Sudanese media says the drones targeted the main international airport, believed the Rapid Support Forces carried out the drone attack, which started on Sunday. And African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilagati, says the continent should utilize agriculture to alleviate hunger and ensure food security. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, so let's find out what's been happening in the world of sport as we say good morning once again to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning once again from the sports desk. Now, South African-born group head of scouting at the Right to Dream project, as well as Danish top division club FC Nordsjælland, that is Jeremy Seidler, has spoken glowingly about their program and just how they have been able to move African players to top leagues around the world. Now, one of the players who have come through this program of Right to Dream is Ghanaian international, as well as West Ham United top attacker Kudus Mohammed. Seidler, who also hails from Pietermaritzburg in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province, Les Kudus, his Black Stars teammate Kamdeen Sulumani at Southampton, as well as Cote d'Ivoire, 2023 AFCON winner Simon Andingra as their success stories.
Kudus is one of the shining lights. You know, Keenan is also a success story because not many kids from El Dorado Park get out. Yeah. So it takes like great resilience and chaperoning and mentoring. So everybody in our organization, you know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. And we're African, so we do these things. So Kudus is one of many, and we're very proud of him, of course. But we also have girls who have gone to the USA.
Right, so Right to Dream has its football base in Ghana, Egypt, as well as Denmark. But Seidler, who has been part of this program over the last 15 years, says there's also an educational element to their program as well.
We are a football organization that has excellent academic opportunities for kids that come from underprivileged backgrounds. We have 4 academies, one in Ghana, one in Egypt, Denmark and USA. Our clubs, we have more academies than clubs actually, so we have 3 clubs. FC Nordsjælland in Denmark, San Diego in the MLS, and FC Mazar in Egypt.
On to this now, Zambia's national under-20 men's football team head coach Boyd Mulwanda says they have worked on their finishing as they prepare to face off with Tanzania in their third Group A match at the Total Energies CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Egypt this afternoon. Now, the young Shipolopolo are yet to win a game in the competition, kicking off the competition with a goalless draw against Sierra Leone and also a goalless draw against the host side Egypt. Mulwanda says the team is ready for their next assignment.
I think we started preparing for the game against Tanzania with the boys. We did the recovery. It was good that there were no injury concerns and everyone looked positive from yesterday's recovery. And today, this morning, we had a session where we were trying to work on our finishing and creating some chances for the team to get a win. I think so far so good. The boys are positive and have shown that they want to win this match.
Back home now, in case you missed it, Kagiso Rabada is free to take on the cricket field again, having served a short ban after testing positive for the use of a recreational drug. This means that the South African bowling kingpin will be available to play in the World Test Championship final against Australia at Lord's in England next month. The substance was found in Rabada's system during the SA20 competition on the 21st of January this year after the rained-out match between Rabada's My Cape Town Town side, as well as the Durban Super Giants at the Kingsmead Stadium in KwaZulu-Natal province, according to a statement put forward by the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport on Monday. So the institute conducted the test. Rabada was randomly selected to undergo the test as a routine. After being made aware of the finding, Rabada accepted the outcome and did not request a B sample. Rabada tested positive for a substance of abuse and was subsequently notified of the allegation of his doping offence on the 1st of May. So the institute classifies the following as substances of abuse: cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, as well as THC. Rabada's suspension began officially when he was notified on the 1st of April following that positive drugs test. And finally, world number one Yannick Sinner said on Monday that he was heading into the Italian Open with low expectations as he makes his comeback after serving a 3-month doping ban. Yannick Sinner is back on the tennis court at an official tournament for the first time in 3 months after his anti-doping suspension ended. Sinner agreed a settlement with World Anti-Doping Agency in February and began his immediate 3-month suspension after authorities accepted that the anabolic agent cluster ball had entered his system via massages from his physiotherapist. The 3-time Grand Slam champion, who has not played since winning the Australian Open in January, will now hope to leave the doping saga behind him and build momentum for the French Open, which officially runs from the 25th of May to 8th of June. The Italian was cleared to return to training officially on the 13th of April, with his suspension ending on the 4th of May. Despite missing out on 3 months of action, the 23-year-old was assured of retaining the top ranking for his home tournament after his closest challenger, Alexander Zverev, crashed out early at the Monte Carlo Masters. This is Sinner addressing the media yesterday in the build-up to the Italian Open.
Well, it's for me personally good news that there are not the Grand Slams included. For sure, it's at some point, when you go on court, can go both ways, or nothing or a lot. So there it's kind of agreement. It's I didn't want to do it in the beginning, so it was a bit not easy for me to accept it, because I know what really happened. But sometimes we have to choose the best in a very bad moment, and that's what we did. So it's all over now. So I'm happy to play tennis again.
And that concludes your Sports News this hour. I'm back with a final sports update on Africa. Rise and shine in the next hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África @ newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
All right, the International Monetary Fund comes to Cairo this week for a review. Let's find out why with Chanduko Lugege as he brings us the latest business news.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. The International Monetary Fund will begin the 5th review of Egypt's $8 billion economic reform program, with a team scheduled to arrive in Cairo this week. The IMF board approved the 4th review on the 11th of March, unlocking a disbursement of $1.2 billion in a 46-month IMF loan program, first approved in 2022 and later expanded following the outbreak of fighting in Gaza. Egypt had been suffering from a severe shortage of foreign currency and inflation that peaked at 38% in September 2023. In West Africa, Nigeria's Ministry of Power has urged consumers to prepare for an increase in electricity tariffs. This comes after the government cut electricity subsidies by 35% through a targeted increase in tariffs for heavier users. The subsidy cut is part of the country's broader reform strategy to attract investors to its power sector. Channel Africa correspondent in Nigeria, Jonathan James Leon, shares how some citizens have reacted to the news.
They keep saying that they're increasing tariffs so that they make the sector attractive for investors. But many people say from when the investors who came in to take over the distribution level of the power sector, we were promised that it's going to lead to better power distribution, and the issues of power would go away. But at almost every turn, the problems seem to come back, maybe with even more force.
Canada's tuna mining says it is eyeing expansion into Guinea after exiting Burkina Faso, where it faced regulatory instability and high security costs because of jihadist threats. Fortuna, which is not currently established in Guinea, is looking for gold mining opportunities there, conducting site visits and meeting with authorities. Michael Mbewe reports.
A portion of the mining company's growing exploration budget will go to Guinea, where there is a lot of room for discovery. The comments highlight how mining companies are responding to the changing landscape in West Africa, where military-run governments are revising mining codes. Burkina Faso and its neighbors Mali and Niger have all seen military officers seize power in coups since 2020.
South Africa's power utility, Eskom, can now run Koeberg Unit 1 for another 20 years. This is according to the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Hosiyensu Ramohoba. He has been speaking at the Eskom headquarters in Sandton, north of Johannesburg, where the power utility updated the nation on the state of electricity grid ahead of the winter season. He thanked Eskom head of generation Beki Umalo for this feat. Ramohoba says they aim to extend the life of Koeberg Unit 2 as well.
And I'm also confident that we are going to deliver the same exceptional results when it comes to Koeberg Unit number 2, that will meet the expectations and the requirements of the regulator.
The South African Municipal Workers Union, SAMWU, has called on the city of Ekurhuleni in the Gauteng province to discontinue disciplinary action against nearly 400 Metropolitan Police officers over an unprotected strike. A dispute over salary adjustments and overtime compensation sparked the strike, which took place in March. The city says it has issued pre-dismissal notices to 389 officers for misconduct. SAMWU Ekurhuleni chairperson is Chris Mawunda.
At this stage, there is no need for the action that the municipality has taken, because it is our understanding that we have established the process with the city on how to resolve these issues through the LLF processes. So we are still hoping that it is only those LLF processes that will bear positive results.
Your financial indicators this morning: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 604, in Botswana 13 pula 48, in Kenya 128 shilling 485, in Zambia 27 kwacha 66. BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 67, in Russia 81 rubles 14, in India 84 rupees 25, China 71.20, South Africa 18 rand 31. $1 is at 75 pence to the British pound, 88 to the euro. Commodities: gold is at $3,358, platinum at $971 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $61.18 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 117144459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Malawi is facing a growing humanitarian challenges. Hundreds of Mozambicans seek asylum, fleeing post-election violence and political instability back home. Now, the situation has intensified following the closure of the Nyamamitutu refugee settlement in the Nsanje district, leaving 336 Mozambican nationals at the site who've refused voluntary repatriation, fearing for their safety, and they're appealing for refugee status and ongoing international protection. Now, the unfolding crisis not only highlights the plight of those displaced, but also raises broader questions about regional stability, refugee policy, and Malawi's capacity to respond. Well, to take a closer look at what's driving this displacement, the obstacles facing asylum seekers, and the potential impact on Malawi and wider Southern Africa region, we're now joined on the line by Dr. George Chaima, who's the president of New Restoration Plan, which is a social think tank institution in Malawi. Thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the program.
You are welcome, Peter. Good morning.
All right, so we saw some serious unrest in Mozambique regarding the last elections. Some would say that by and large, peace has been restored in the country. So what's your take on the move to try and repatriate all the Mozambicans that are in Malawi that had fled Mozambique?
You know, over the years, Malawi has been quite a safe haven for refugee seekers because of its political landscape, which has always promoted and also preserved peace. So a number of refugees from various countries, which are war-torn countries, like DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, Ethiopia, and sometimes also Mozambique, have been seeking refugee in Malawi. And it is also safe to say that as of last year, Malawi was hosting almost over 60,000 refugees. And most of them came from Mozambique, you know, following the recent elections in Mozambique, which were disputed. Most of the people in Mozambique were also having their lives in danger, so they thought it was wise to go and seek refugees in Malawi. And the Nyamitutu refugee camp in Nsanje was one of the refugee centers in the country which hosted them. And now, knowing that war is over and conflicts, political conflicts in Mozambique are over, it is only good and also the right thing that those who sought a refugee in Malawi should relocate back to their country. They should be repatriated. A good thing is that most of them have accepted and have already started going back, while a few, maybe just a few hundreds, I think something around 300 plus, refugees still want to stick around. Sometimes, you know, when you're running away from your country due to unsafety reasons, it's also understandable that in a place of refugee, you should find also solace and protection. If for some other reasons, some of the refugees who are still here are refusing to go back, then probably there should be valid reasons for that. You have to bear in mind that whenever people are running away from their country because of political conflicts, obviously some become the targets of political opponents in that particular country. So you cannot force them to go when the law provides protection for them through refugee diplomatic arrangements. So I should believe that Malawi should accommodate those who qualify to be accommodated and also retain those who should be retained according to the law.
Has Malawi the capacity to look after so many refugees, asylum seekers? You mentioned the number around 60,000. One often sees where there's a growing number of refugees or asylum seekers in a country, tensions can develop with the local population.
I would not want to say that Malawi has the capacity. Malawi lacks capacity to host multitudes of refugees without support of international sources, and not just a requirement of international support, but you have also to understand that not all of the refugees who flock to a country are safe for refugees. Some of them are volatile, violent, and also criminals. So when they are among the citizens of Malawi, some of them have already been involved in criminal acts, which also poses security issues to our own nation. As a country, we need to be secure and we need to be protected. And those who are volatile, those who are violent, have no room in this country and they have to go back to their country. So Malawi does not have that particular capacity required to host the refugees. We have also to understand that where there is a huge number of people living together, outbreak of diseases is also rampant. So to avoid the escalation of pandemic and epidemic breakouts, it's just necessary that the number of refugees in the country has to be reduced. After all, we don't have so many refugee camps in this country to host such a number of people.
Dr. Chaima, we're going to have to keep it short today, but your contributions, thoughts, analysis, always greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time.
You are welcome, Peter. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Dr. George Chaima, president of New Restoration Plan, which is a social think tank institute in Malawi, talking about the refugee situation between Mozambique and Malawi. Many Mozambicans had fled the country but are now being repatriated, but some are just refusing to go back home.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The Democratic Alliance Party in South Africa is heading to court this morning to challenge an amendment to South Africa's Employment Equity Act. The party says that the act is a race register and is taking the government and the Minister of Labour, Nomakosazana Meth, to court over what they refer to as a draconian law that is unconstitutional and seeks to discriminate unfairly and unconstitutionally. Now, to get details on this, we're joined on the line by Democratic Alliance National Spokesperson, Vili Okamp. Vili, good morning to you, and thanks for making time for us.
Good morning, Asanda. Always a pleasure to speak with you guys.
Awesome, always. This amendment to South Africa's Employment Equity Act targets work specifically in the country. What exactly does it provide for, to give background to all our listeners?
The Amendment Act in its current form gives a lot of powers to the Minister of Labour that she or he can force down onto companies, telling them what their employment must be consisting of. Now we've got a problem in the sense that in certain provinces, our demographics are not the same as in other provinces. So if you are going to apply a national geographic spread with regards to race configuration in a specific province, it will have a negative effect to people in that province. Let me give you a perfect example. In the province of KwaZulu-Natal, we've got more Indian people there than in other provinces in the country. In terms of this act, if you are now going to apply this national geographical spread in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, it will in effect mean that no person of Indian descent will be able to obtain a job in a company that has got more than 50 employees. The same goes for the Western Cape with regards to colored people. There are more colored people in the Western Cape than in other provinces. So you cannot have this blanket approach where the minister has got all this power to make decisions that will hamper economical growth in certain provinces and obviously job creation. From the Democratic Alliance's side, we believe that redress should take place. Apartheid was wrong, and we need to make right the wrongs of the past. But we can't make it right by committing another wrong. We can't make the apartheid system, which was a discriminatory system. We can't correct that by being now discriminatory again against another part of the population. We've got to do redress, but we've got to do it in a way where we grow our economy and where we create jobs. This will deter companies from growing. Let me give you an example. This act it applies to companies with 50 or more employees. Now you might have a company that's got 45 employees. He is on the verge of expanding. That company can grow the economy further, and can help to create jobs. That company might now tell himself, well, let's rather not grow. Let's rather not employ more people, because the moment that we do, we are going to fall into this bracket where we've got to adhere to the things that the minister is going to force down on us. And they also then walk the risk of having penalties of 10% of turnover, not 10% of profit, 10% of turnover being imposed on them if they do not do that. Now, there's very little companies whose profit is more than 10% of their turnover. So this will mean that companies will be shutting down and they will not create further jobs. So this act, in its amended form as it is now, is definitely not going to contribute towards building, firstly, better relationships in this country, but helping to grow the economy and helping to create jobs. It will achieve the opposite.
So quite a number of clear and concise arguments in terms of where the DA is coming from on this amendment. In terms of your thoughts then, how should transformation occur in South Africa in a way that will differentiate quotas from negative effects of transformation?
Well, firstly, our Constitutional Court has already in the past ruled against quotas. The racial quotas is not allowed. And you must be very careful that when does targets become a racial quota? We must do things that will help the economy to grow in this country. When you ask me how redress must take place, I can refer you to the Western Cape, where the Democratic Alliance is governing. In the Western Cape, where we govern, the unemployment rate is by far the lowest in the country. We've seen over many years of the previous ANC governments how the unemployment rate just grew year on year. In 2008, 5.5 million people were unemployed. That doubled to last year, where 11.1 million people are unemployed. That is in 15, 18 years' time that has doubled. We must put measures in place that will grow the economy. Without economical growth, redress is impossible. If we grow the economy, we can do the redress so desperately needed.
As member of the country's government of national unity, have you raised your objections with the other parties within the GNU, and what's the response been, if you have?
Yes, we have. We must remember that this court case was already filed more than 2 years ago when the act was agreed to. But we have discussed this, and this brings us to another request that we've also put forward in the Government of National Unity, and that is that we must have more discussions more frequently. The clearinghouse mechanism that is supposed to iron out problems before they become major problems is not functioning as it should. The Deputy President is the chairperson of that committee, and we are not really getting that committee to start to function fully. So we have requested more meetings more often with the GNU partners, but the Democratic Alliance will definitely not be a rubber stamp for ANC policies. We have seen what the ANC's policies in this country have done over many years to the people of this country. And we will not, from our side, be there just to approve what they want. We are there to serve the people of this country, and we do that in everything that we do on a daily basis.
All right. Thank you so much again for your time. As always, great catching up with you, Vili.
Thank you very much, Asanda. Have a very nice day.
You too. Democratic Alliance National Spokesperson Vili Okam, and the party is part of the governance of National Unity, Government of National Unity in South Africa. They are challenging an amendment to South Africa's Employment Equity Act today in court.
And we'll continue to unpack that. We're hoping to get a view from the labour unions and maybe even an economist. That's all coming up in the next 30 minutes, because right now it's time for your news with Onele Nsinsi and sports headlines with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Rwandan Foreign Affairs Minister Olivia Nduhungirehe says Kigali is in the early stages of talks with the Trump administration to accept migrants that are deported by the U.S. This comes after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington was looking for countries that would take in some of what they refer to as the most despicable human beings. Rwanda had previously also agreed to accept migrants deported by the United Kingdom, but the UK abandoned the program, which faced legal challenges after Labour Party took over last year. Didaba Zodetsi reports.
Rwandan Foreign Affairs Minister Olivia Nduhungirehe has disclosed to local TV station that Kigali is in the spirit of giving another chance to migrants who have problems around the world. He says that they are engaging with the US and it's too early to predict their outcome. Since returning to the White House, US President Donald Trump has focused on pushing for the removal of undocumented migrants with the promise of mass deportations. But Rwanda has previously been criticized for its human rights record, including the risk that those sent to the East African nation could be deported again to countries where they may face danger. However, Rwanda says it is a safe place for refugees.
There's been a drone attack on the Sudanese port city of Port Sudan for a third consecutive day. The Sudanese media says the drones targeted the main international airport. It is believed the Rapid Support Forces carried out the drone attacks, which started on Sunday. The BBC's Andrew Ochieng.
Local media reported that there had been explosions near the civilian terminal at Port Sudan's international airport and huge fires can be seen. There are reports that several scheduled flights have been cancelled. Previous attacks on the city have been blamed on the Rapid Support Forces, who are in a civil war with the Sudanese army. On Monday, Sudan's energy minister said the RSF had deliberately bombed an oil depot in the city to paralyze life there. Over 2 years of conflict, Port Sudan has been a safe haven until now. The Red Sea port had served as the base of Sudan's military government and the main center for humanitarian support.
A bodyguard for the Ugandan opposition politician Bobi Wine has been charged with aggravated robbery. This is days after the head of the military said he had abducted him. The lawyer representing the bodyguard, Eddie Mutwe, said his client had been tortured. The BBC's Will Ross reports.
Ugandan security operatives tried to shield Eddie Mutwe and prevent the media seeing him as he was brought to court. But videos showed Bobi Wine's bodyguard barefoot and hardly able to walk. His lawyer says his client was beaten all over the body and was given electric shocks whilst in military custody. Last week, President Yoweri Museveni's son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, posted on social media that he'd detained Eddie Mutwe. The army chief said he'd been shaved and that he planned to castrate him. It's unlikely to be a coincidence that Uganda's elections are a few months away.
In another legal matter, the Constitutional Court is today set to deliver judgment on whether South Africans should automatically lose their citizenship when they acquire the citizenship of another country. The case relates to a section of the South African Citizenship Act, which stipulates that South Africans will lose their citizenship if they voluntarily acquire another nationality, unless they apply for and obtain retention from the Home Affairs Minister. The Supreme Court of Appeal previously ruled that the section of the Act was unconstitutional. The Constitutional Court is today expected to determine whether this ruling should be upheld. The African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilagati, says the continent should utilize agriculture to alleviate hunger and to ensure food security. This comes as Africa scrambles for resources from within after the U.S. cut off aid. Vilagati was speaking on the sidelines of the launch of the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program Strategy and Action Plan.
Where are the national banks? Because the money is just revolving there. To what extent will they are they involved in agricultural processes? To what extent are pension funds being involved in agriculture? Because before they go and actually count the monies, they must have eaten. So I think it's about time that there's a mindset that changes to say, let's put agriculture at the front, not at the periphery of what we do. If we do that, we will make this continent to be self-reliant.
Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Sierra Leone as well as South Africa are poised for a first ever clash at the Total Energies CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations tournament, while Audi has restructured the management of its Formula One team for a second time in less than a year before its official appearance on the grid as from next season. Details coming up at 8:30.
This is for when you have to wake your neighbors up. Weekends, 3 to 6 in the morning.
On that beautiful piano tip. This is Angelic, hanging out with Demtuda and the musical chef. Wamuhle. It basically means you are beautiful. You know what? It makes me think though, if I were a woman, I would be very appreciative, of meeting guys that will tell you that you are beautiful. But I think the annoying part though, those ones. Baby, my size. That one should be very annoying. Yeah, no wonder I'm not a woman.
When you have to wake your neighbors up, play them the Morning Switch on the weekends with the Shy Guy, 3 to 6 in the morning, Central African Time. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So, as you've been hearing, South Africa's Democratic Alliance Party, that's one of the parties of the Government of National Unity, is taking legal action today against the Employment Equity Act Amendment Act. Now, the party argues that the law is unconstitutional and discriminatory. The Amendment Act, which came into effect in January, empowers the Labour Minister to set sector-specific targets aimed at improving the representation of historically disadvantaged groups, particularly black South Africans and women in senior management and professional roles. Now, the legislation has stirred some fierce debate over the balance between redress and merit, economic transformation and constitutional rights. Well, to help us unpack the economic, social and legal dimensions of this, we're now joined by economist and social policy researcher Duma Qobole. Duma, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Thanks, Peter. I still can't get too used to this new role of yours. But anyway.
I know. Even I'm getting used to it. So let's get your first reaction. BEE, affirmative action, whatever you want to call it, so for our viewers, our listeners across the continent to understand. What are your thoughts about this amendment?
Peter, I don't even know where to start. The Democratic Alliance wants to remain a 20% party. They hate anything that involves redress, righting the wrongs of our painful past, our past of colonialism and apartheid. Now, if you look at the statistics, I do the statistics every year when the Commission for Employment Equity releases their reports. But from 2009 to 2023, 14 years, the representation of white and foreign people went down from 77% to 68%. So after 3 decades of democracy in top management in the private sector, 68% of people are still white. And then if you unpack the black representation, It went from 23.3 to 32%, to 31.9. Now, if you unpack that one, Africans, 12.5 to 14. So the majority of the increase came from the representation of South Africans of Indian descent, 5.9%. They doubled from 5.9 to 12%. So we have achieved nothing. African people are 80% of the population last time I looked, and they are 14% in management. That is completely unacceptable, and we have to call out what is going on in these companies. The companies are racist. And so I don't even support sectoral targets. I believe, and these are not quotas, as the DA is incorrectly saying. These are targets for companies, I support quotas, and every year, every time there's a new president of the Black Management Forum, I go to them and I tell them, I don't support you guys, what you're saying. We need a one quota for the whole economy, because the law, when it was started, I think in the 90s, late 90s, companies could set their own targets. And obviously that hasn't worked. So now they're saying now we must have sector targets. And I think that's not going to work as well. I think we should have one target for the whole economy. Yeah.
So,
and the last thing I want to say, Peter, is that we already do have a target, a uniform target for the economy in the BE Code of Good Practice, And I think it's time we should have a relook at those BE Codes of Good Practice. So I don't know why the DA is only coming to this now when we already have targets for the whole economy, well, for most of the economy in the BE Codes of Good Practice. Yeah.
The spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance, we spoke to him a short while ago, and he said that one of the challenges with this is that demographically the country isn't uniform. So one uniform legislation won't work. So, for example, in KwaZulu-Natal, you have a disproportionately higher number of Indian people, and in the Western Cape, disproportionately higher number of coloured people. So one national target is going to distort the realities on the ground. What's your take on that?
Yeah, but it's just nonsense. They obviously don't understand what they're saying, because, African coloured Indian people are black, so according to the B Act. So I just don't know, they're splitting hairs about something that's irrelevant. If you're in Cape Town, you'll do it according to the demographics in Cape Town. So I just don't see what the issue is. I honestly don't see what the issue is. Yeah.
All right. So why has there been slow progress in terms of senior management and professional roles?
The thing is, I just think it's racism. Peter, in a previous life, I used to help the companies implement this thing, and I saw it in real life. And companies just, there's no consequence if they don't do anything. So I looked at the example of Norway some years ago. I think it was in 2003 or 4. The Minister of Trade and Industry, I think, he just got tired of the excuses companies in Norway were having around not having women representation on their boards. And he set a quota. I think it had to be achieved in 4 or 5 years. And the penalty for not complying was that they deregister your company, and they all met it, and then now many countries in Europe are following the Norwegian example and trying to do the same. So I just think it's about time that we considered some kind of drastic action in terms of some kind of drastic action to get this transformation thing going. Because we can't be doing something that doesn't work for so long. So
what do you make of this argument that this is going to be a race thing and not a merit thing?
Well, that is just I think it's not a merit thing now, because it is a race thing. There's an assumption that white people are competent and black people are not competent. So the people who are saying it shouldn't be a race thing, they're the ones who are making the race thing. Because how can you say that, on what basis can you say 70% of people, in top management should be white? That is just absolutely absurd. And that they're on merit. Nonsense, I just don't buy that,
investor sentiment? Is this something that they are watching and could be affected by?
You know, Peter, there are similar laws in countries throughout the world. So I don't think we've got so many serious problems of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. I resent the fact that the DA is causing this national debate about something so pointless. You know, I just resent the fact that I even have to be discussing this with you, like after 31 years of democracy. You know, it's just like I really resent what the DA is saying, and I hope that South Africans punish them electorally for coming up with this stupid court action. Yeah.
So if this, I mean, this is a 30-year story, as you say. That means somebody who graduated 30 years ago should actually be a senior director in a major corporation by now. So it's not as if there hasn't been enough time. What has been happening to those graduates?
I actually don't know, because you know, there's problems with our education system, but we you know, there's more than 200,000 graduates every year. And we're not, to fill top senior management, you're not talking about many people. You know, most people don't work in top senior management. So we're talking about 52,000 people in top management, 126,000 people in senior management. No, I don't accept even this idea that there might be a skills shortage. That is just not true. They've made it up. And the DA just doesn't want to transform, and South Africans must call them out for me. And I just wonder why the ANC has gone into a marriage or a coalition with such a party. It's just absolutely absurd, you know. Yeah.
Might... whilst the sentiment holds water, might it struggle in court, though?
I'm not a lawyer. I look at the economics of it, and but I've just and I was also involved in the B policy development and over the years. But I just can't talk about the legal aspects of it. There are people who can talk about it. Yeah.
So. One would think.
I should just quickly talk, Peter, about African women. You know, I forgot to talk. You know, African women, I think it's 40% of the population. Their representation in top management from 2009 to 2023 increased from 3.8 to 5.5. They are the most marginalized group in the economy, and whether it's employment or representation in management, and I just don't understand. And if you look at and I look at the statistics sometimes for the training of black chartered accountants, and the majority of black chartered accountants, you know, there's thousands of them, they're black women, you know, and I don't see them when I look at these companies on their CFOs, on the JSE. Something is going on. So I don't know why there's this, there's something that requires another kind of intervention to, you know, in terms of the representation of African women.
And I've got first-hand knowledge. I see it in the legal profession as well. When you look at advocates, again, complete misrepresentation in terms of the demographics of the country. But intelligence is equally distributed, so there should be 80% of people qualifying.
Yes.
But it's not.
And as you said, we've had 30 years to write this, and we're still complaining now. No.
So the public sector, is that sorted? In other words, that's not an area we need to worry about. Is it just the private sector?
I don't think it's more so when I look at the statistics, I just look at the private sector, because I think there are parts of the public sector that are struggling. For example, higher education. When I talk to people there are problems in higher education. But I haven't followed them that closely. But the public sector in general, it is kind of transformed, and there's a high representation of women and black women in the public sector. So I think most of professional black women work in the public sector.
All right. So listening to you, essentially what you're saying is that 30 years on, the private sector is still very much white owned, and they're looking after their own.
Yes, I also do statistics on ownership on the JSE. It's about 2% black ownership on the JSE, and this just gives you an indication what to talk about. And if you choose to exclude the foreign assets of JSE companies, it's about 6%. Yeah.
How does that change?
I think there's a problem, Peter, is that we've seen, the whole transformation debate has gone into the people who are pro-transformation, like myself. We're on the defensive because there's been bombardment with fake news from AfriForum, the DA, and all these anti-transformation. And then it's gone as far as, US President Donald Trump. So extreme right-wingers throughout the world have united and made up all this fake news around transformation. And the one that gets to me, like the Minister of Trade and Industry announced a transformation fund, and they just spread fake news about it, that they're going to expropriate company profits. And there was no such intention by the Minister of Trade and Industry, but it became a fact. And I just think that we need to recenter the whole transformation debate in South Africa again. Yeah.
All right. Perhaps as a final question, if
the president must set the tone as well. I once served on the BE Commission, one of the things that I worked with him, and he was the chairperson of the BE Commission report. He was my boss. And since he became president, he must set the tone. Of all people, he should understand it more than most people, but he's been quiet, in terms of this issue. So, President Ramaphosa, you've got to set the tone on this side.
Or perhaps, okay, I'm going to have to leave it there, but very briefly, what should be the consequences for companies that are just not moving?
I think there should be higher consequences. I think the lawyers must decide, but currently many companies just choose to pay the fine and they don't have a problem with that. And so I don't know what the sanctions could be. You could do what Norway did, you deregister the company. I have no idea. Yeah.
Okay. Duma, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Good hearing your voice.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Duma Kobule, who's an economist and social policy researcher, saying that the private sector is just not taking transformation seriously and are pretty much racist.
Now, to get more reaction on this, we're joined now to get more reaction on this on the line by Unions Federation of South Africa, COSATU's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks. Matthew, good morning to you, and thanks for making time to continue on this chat.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
As COSATU, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, you support the amendment to the Employment Equity Act. From the perspective of Labour, how do you view this act as being beneficial?
Well, we support employment equity, including the amendments, because we come from a very painful past where over 3.5 centuries, workers were discriminated based upon their race. African and colored Indian workers were denied full and equal opportunity to meet their potential systematically. As employment equity seeks to address that, not in a blunt, rigid way, but in a measured way which really helps to try to nudge employees in the right direction, to give all employees a fair chance, to try to provide encouragement to employers to invest in the career opportunities of workers. But for 30 years, government has largely operated upon a voluntary approach to this. Some employers have embraced it, and we've seen progress, but also some sectors, especially in the private sector, have really failed to embrace it. And hence, as a consequence, when you look at the stats that say reports, you'll see that 60% of management positions in the private sector are held by white men largely, yet only constituting about 4% of society. So the employment equity amendments try to make a bit to nudge employers to do more. It empowers the minister to set targets for certain sectors or professions which are falling far behind. Employers will have to work over 5 years towards meeting those targets. But it's not a rigid, it's not an unthinking approach. It says if an employer can't find a person of this designated group for a certain position, they can simply provide an explanation why they couldn't. There's different criteria to indicate, well, indeed, we advertised, nobody applied, etc. So it's not a thoughtless approach. It's just trying to nudge people in the right direction. But I think also people, unfortunately, it gets politicized. So you have the DA, AfriForum, etc., saying, well, coloured, white, Indian workers would be dismissed. That's not true. Employment equity embraces every single South African, including white men. But it just simply says, can workplaces try to reflect the diversity of society? The recent amendments also include some very important issues to elevate regional demographics to be taken into account, because the demographics of the Western Cape are very different from those of Limpopo or those of KwaZulu-Natal. So you don't need a one-size-fits-all approach. You need one which is nuanced, which reflects the local conditions. It also tries to ease the reporting requirements on small employers. So employers with 15 less employees don't have to submit annual reports. It provides incentives as well. An employer who wants to do business with the state would need to have a compliance certificate that yes, indeed, they are in compliance with the Employment Equity Act, with the Minimum Wage Act, as a way of trying to reward those employers who embrace the laws, and of course to disincentivize those who choose not to embrace
And
the
to
laws.
what extent does it address those issues? Because that would be what the Democratic Alliance is arguing against when it comes to the amendment. Are those made very clear by the bill, particularly around the concern that South Africa's demographics are not spread equally from province to province, and that the Act seeks to put a blanket approach, which it shouldn't. This is the concern of the DA, and that it will lead to negative economic effects. Are these concerns invalid from the DA?
But the DA's concerns are completely invalid, and I think one should just also take them with a pinch of salt. The DA's court case was lodged in 2023, a year before the elections, when the Act was promulgated. And the DA ran on a bit of a Swat Khafar election campaign, where they ran to coloured Indian townships and said, you will lose your job under the ANC. Because in the Act itself, and the DA knows this, the lawyers know this, there's nothing of such. The targets themselves are very modest. For example, you take all the targets together and they equal about 50 to 60%. So an employee can just simply make progress in that half, and the other half of the workforce isn't even affected. So there's ample space to accommodate people. It's over 5 years. And if an employee can't meet any target, there are 7 criteria within which they can cite that I couldn't meet this criteria for these reasons, and things will continue. But the idea is, with many laws, is to simply nudge people to change their culture, to move forward. And the fact is, over 30 years, we have made it simply a voluntary approach. And as a consequence, you see a lack of transformation in many workplaces. Other workplaces have embraced it, and there's no issue at all. And when you look at the specific targets and you actually compare the current employment figures, you will see that it's actually a very small, modest amount that the government is asking them to make progress, around 5 to 10% on average. So that shouldn't be something which gives anybody a heart attack, unless, of course, they are completely opposed to a non-racial society.
How significant is it that now is the time, this amendment, to be in place? 3 decades post-democracy, South Africa's economy is still controlled by the minority.
No, it's important, and it's important that government adjusts when it sees that certain things have not moved in the direction it would have wanted to at the pace. And it's useful that government also listens to society. So one of the amendments about regional demographics, that came about because of our Solidarity court case, which correctly cited there's a need to elevate regional demographics. So there are important things, and it's useful that government and parliament are able to adjust to try to say, okay, this is not working well here, let's adjust it, let's make an adjustment here because we need to do a bit better in this regard. So those are useful things, but employment equity, it is a sensitive issue, and it doesn't help when politicians, out of desperation for votes, simply seek to exploit people's genuine fears. We should be, very sensitive to the damage that is done when politicians do that, and really rather have a calm conversation and make the point that employment equity covers everybody. So if an employer has no white people, they will need, the part of the targets will say to them, what are you doing to see if you can hire white people, for example. But it's not trying to be too pedant, to engage in too much micromanagement, and hence an employer with less than 50 employees isn't required to submit reports annually. So you're not going to want to get into a small restaurant, a family restaurant, which employs 10 people, But to say to the large employers, you do need to do a bit more.
In what ways do you believe the amendments will empower those who enter into state contracts as well as labor inspectors?
So, it specifically requires labor inspectors to check compliance with employment equity when they do the inspections. So that's important because often, some inspectors might forget to do that. So it makes it a formal requirement. They must check compliance with the Employment Equity Act. The Department of Labor is increasing the number of inspectors it has from 2,000 to over 20,000 this year, next year. So that's going to really significantly increase its footprint and its capacity. And of course, as part of the public procurement reforms, it also requires any company doing business with the state to have a compliance certificate from the Department of Labor that yes, indeed, they are in compliance with Employment Equity Act and the Minimum Wage Act. And again, it's good to reward companies who abide by the law and, of course, to disincentivize those who break the law.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much again for your time, Matthew.
Okay, thank you.
That was COSATU, the Congress of South African Trade Unions Parliamentary Coordinator, Matthew Parks, on that story. I think that wraps it now in terms of that topic. It's 30 minutes past 8 Central African time. Let's let's hear from Onele Nzinzi with our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Multiple explosions and fires are reported to have been seen and heard in Sudan's capital, Port Sudan, in the early hours of this morning. Hundreds of opposition protesters dressed in red and black have condemned a decision by Ghana's president to suspend the country's chief justice and are demanding that she be reinstated with immediate effect. And the African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilagati, says the continent should utilize agriculture to alleviate hunger and ensure food security. The African Union Commission, in partnership with the African Union Development Agency, New Partnership for Africa's Development, is officially launching the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program Strategy and Action Plan for 2026 to 2035. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's hear from Musibudi Makura now in terms of what's happening in the world of sports.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. For the final time this morning on Africa Rise and Shine, we'll start with football news. So Sierra Leone as well as South Africa are poised for a first ever clash at the Total Energies CAF Under-20 CAF Africa Cup of Nations tournament at the Suez Canal Stadium in Somalia tonight. Sierra Leone having already secured a quarter-final place, but South Africa will want to win, and that will then take them in a position where they will take rather a giant step towards the knockout rounds of this year's competition. Sierra Leone are meeting Southern African opposition for a second time. This after they drew goalless against Zambia. This is South Africa's fourth game against a tournament debutant, and they have never defeated a tournament debutant, drawing and then losing to Burkina Faso as well as Gabon. Now, Sierra Leone have also been the surprise package of this year's tournament, unbeaten in their first three matches. They opened the competition with a goalless draw against Zambia before defeating Egypt 4-1 and then Tanzania 1-0. A win against South Africa would then make Sierra Leone the first tournament debutant since Congo in 2007 to win 3 consecutive matches. At the finals, South Africa meanwhile head into their final group game with renewed confidence after 1-0 victory over Tanzania last week. They opened their campaign with a narrow 1-0 defeat to Egypt and will now aim to secure consecutive group stage wins for the first time since 2009 when they defeated Cote d'Ivoire as well as Nigeria in back-to-back matches. We'll stay with football news. South African-born group head of scouting at the Right to Dream project, as well as Danish top division club FC Noordjylland, that is Jeremy Seidel, has spoken glowingly about their program and just how they've been able to move African players to top leagues around the world. One of the players who have come through this program of Right to Dream is Ghanaian international, as well as West Ham United top attacker Kudus Mohammed. Seidel, who hails from Pietermaritzburg in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province, Les Kudus, his Black Stars teammate Kamdeen Sulumana at Southampton, as well as Cote d'Ivoire 2023 AFCON winner Simon Ndigra, as the success stories of this project.
Kudus is one of the shining lights. You know, Keenan is also a success story because not many kids from Eldorado Park get out.
Yeah.
So it takes like great resilience and chaperoning and mentoring. So everybody in our organization, they say it takes a village to raise a child. And we're African, so we do these things. So Kudus is one of many, and we're very proud of him, of course. But we also have girls who have gone to the USA.
Now, Right to Dream has its football base in Ghana, Egypt, as well as Denmark. But Sido, who has been part of this program for the last 15 years, says they are an educational, rather there is an educational element to their program as well.
We are a football organization that has excellent academic opportunities for kids that come from underprivileged backgrounds. We have 4 academies, one in Ghana, one in Egypt, Denmark and USA. Our clubs, we have more academies than clubs actually, so we have 3 clubs. FC Nordsjælland in Denmark, San Diego in the MLS, and FC Mazar in Egypt.
On to Formula One news now. Audi has restructured the management of its Formula One team for a second time in less than a year before its official appearance on the grid next season. Mattia Benito, previously chief executive, chief operating as well as technical officer, has been made the head of the Audi Formula One project, while chief executive officer Adam Baker has left the company. So a spokesperson for Audi said the move made the structure of engine departments very clear as well as streamlined. Benito joined Audi in July last year in the reorganization that removed its former Formula One chief executive officer Andries Cyril, who had been recruited from McLaren, where he was the team principal at the end of 2022. So the spokesperson also said that Benito in place, it became more apparent over time that the CEO role had become obsolete. The Audi project is split over 2 sides, the power unit base in the Germany and the car design as well as manufacturing base currently competing in Formula One as Sauber under Audi ownership in Switzerland. So Audi will formally now enter Formula One in 2026. New engine rules that attracted the company come into force. This increases the amount of power provided, of course, by the electrical component of the engine to about 50%. And finally, Los Angeles Lakers superstar LeBron James was unable to attend Monday night's Met Gala event due to a knee injury that he sustained last week. James previously had announced as the honorary chair for the iconic fashion event that serves as a fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. James confirmed a previous report that he sustained his injury in Game 5 of the Western Conference first round series against the Minnesota Timberwolves. James was injured after Minnesota guard Dante DiVincenzo collided with his knee in the fourth quarter. He was immediately taken off after that injury, and he was examined before returning to the contest in that fourth quarter with about 7 minutes remaining. That's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. More sporting updates coming up in the On The Move team. For any sports stories that you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's get our final economics update for Rise and Shine on this Tuesday. Here's Chandugo Ligege with your details.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Congo and Rwanda have submitted a draft peace proposal as part of a process meant to end fighting in eastern Congo and attract billions of dollars of Western investment. This is the latest step in an ambitious bid by the Trump administration to end a decades-long conflict in a region rich in minerals, including tantalum, gold, cobalt, copper, and lithium. The two countries' foreign ministers agreed last month at a ceremony in Washington alongside U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to submit the draft proposal by the 2nd of May, but neither Kinshasa nor Kigali has publicly confirmed doing so. South African political party the Democratic Alliance will this morning head to the High Court in Pretoria to challenge the Employment Equity Act. The party has argued that the legislation is discriminatory, unfair, and has a negative impact on hundreds of thousands of jobs. Meanwhile, the DA's court challenge has sparked backlash from many, including the African National Congress Parliamentary Caucus. According to the caucus, the legal challenge is an attack on progress the country has made in achieving an equitable society. DA Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zille has defended the court challenge.
And we're not flying blind here. We've had an employment equity regime which was meant to drive employment equity for the last 25 years. And we've seen since 2008 unemployment almost double from 5.5 million on the expanded definition to 11.1 million last year.
The South African Municipal Workers Union, SAMWU, has called on the city of Ekurhuleni in the Gauteng province to discontinue disciplinary action against nearly 400 Metropolitan Police officers over an unprotected strike. A dispute over salary adjustments and overtime compensation sparked the strike, which took place in March. The city says it has issued pre-dismissal notices to 389 officers for misconduct. SAMWU Ekurhuleni chairperson is Chris Mawunda.
At this stage, there is no need for the action that the municipality has taken, because it is our understanding that we have established the process with the city on how to resolve these issues through the LLF processes. So we are still hoping that it is only those LLF processes that will bear positive results.
Nigeria's Ministry of Power has urged consumers to prepare for an increase in electricity tariffs. This comes after the government cut electricity subsidies by 35% through a targeted increase in tariffs for heavier users. The subsidy cut is part of the country's broader reform strategy to attract investors to its power sector. Channel Africa correspondent in Nigeria, Jonathan James, shares how some citizens have reacted to the news.
They keep saying that they're increasing tariffs so that they make the sector attractive for investors. But many people say from when the investors who came in to take over the distribution level of the power sector, we were promised that it's going to lead to better power distribution, and the issues of power would go away. But at almost every turn, the problems seem to come back, maybe with even more force.
The International Monetary Fund will begin the fifth review of Egypt's $8 billion economic reform program, with a team scheduled to arrive in Cairo this week. The IMF board approved the fourth review on the 11th of March, unlocking a disbursement of $1.2 billion in a 46-month IMF loan program first approved in 2022 and later expanded following the outbreak of fighting in Gaza. Egypt had been suffering from a severe shortage of foreign currency and inflation that peaked at 38% in September 2023. Let's have a look at financial indicators this morning. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Naira 604. In Botswana, 13 Pula 48. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 485. Zambia, 27 Kwacha 66. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 Real 67. Russia, 81 rubles 14. India, 84 rupee 25. China, 7 yuan 20. South Africa, $1 is at 18 rand 31. $1 is at 75 pence to the British pound, 88 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,356. Platinum at $971 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $61.21 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Now, a bold new chapter is taking shape in Cape Town's historic District 6, and that's an area once vibrant with culture and community, but devastated by forced removals under apartheid. Well, now it's being reimagined as a space for innovation and opportunity. The United Nations Development Programme, the UNDP, in South Africa has partnered with UVU Accelerate, the entrepreneurial development arm of UVU Africa, to launch Africa's first dedicated creative tech hub, the Timbuktu Creative Hub. And the hub aims to scale up for Africa's creative economy by supporting and nurturing tech-enabled entrepreneurs from across the continent. And it's all part of the broader Timbuktu initiative, a bold UNDP-led vision to catalyze youth-driven innovation across Africa. And to tell us a little bit more about this transformative project, we're now joined by Lara Rosmarin, who's the head of entrepreneur development at UVU Accelerate. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here with you this morning.
So let's start with the big picture. What exactly is the Timbuktu Creative Hub, and what gap are you aiming to fill on the continent?
So the Timbuktu Creative Hub is really Africa's first dedicated creative tech hub. And as you mentioned, it's being established in Cape Town through a partnership between the United Nations Development Plan and UVU Africa, which is the entrepreneurial development arm of UVU Africa. So that's UVU Accelerate. And the hub is located in the Homecoming District, in District 6, and it's really designed to be a catalyst for growth across multiple creative sectors. So that includes film, music, fashion, gaming, animation, design, and even digital arts. And it will really offer a dynamic and inclusive space where creatives can access cutting-edge infrastructure, digital tools, mentorship, funding pathways, and business support to really help transform their talents into scalable and sustainable ventures, which really is the goal. And it's a flagship for Africa's growing imagination economy, as we like to say. And the hub serves really as a vibrant platform for the co-creation, for innovation, and for commercialization. And we really want to help creatives to overcome the barriers of access to markets, to capital, and to networks that have really historically limited their growth.
It sounds like a very innovative way to approach developing creative economies. Has this worked in other parts of the world? Is this a model that you've seen somewhere else working?
So really, we know that hubs and cluster development really is a proven strategy for driving innovation and attracting investment and creating economic resilience. So we know that from history and from past successes, that when businesses and support organizations, government, academia, and they all come together really to create economies of scale and shared knowledge and competitive advantage, it can really have an absolutely transformative effect.
Interesting partnership, UVU Africa with UNDP. Tell us a little bit about that, and what does each partner bring to this initiative?
So UVA Accelerate and UNDP, as you mentioned, we have this partnership, and it's really built on our shared value and our shared vision to really unlock Africa's innovation and creative potential by building a strong and supportive economic and entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we really are, as UVA Accelerate, we will lead the operational and rollout of this ecosystem development of this hub, and it would include designing and implementing tailored incubation and acceleration programs, curating access to markets and capital, and really cultivating strategic partnerships that drive long-term growth. And that really is our goal. And we really aim to this UNDP partnership that we have, it really aims not only to provide catalytic funding and technical support through the Timbuktu initiative, but also as a global development lens and commitment to inclusive innovation.
And you're hoping that this will be a Pan-African initiative coming out of Cape Town, or are you going to be dropping hubs right across the continent?
So together we aim to create a model that is replicable across the continent, but the programs that we're going to have, that we're going to drive from our Cape Town hub, will be accessible to entrepreneurs all over Africa. So we're working really hard to ensure that it's open to all our entrepreneurs across Africa.
All right, let's talk a little bit about criteria then, who you're looking for to assist and who should be interested in this project.
So prerequisite requirements is really creatives across Africa that are looking to ideate businesses, to build and grow, or to grow and scale whatever business it is that they're working in. We're looking for a strong creative concept or project within target sectors, commitment to entrepreneurial growth, willingness to participate in structured programs and workshops, and those that are really looking for advanced streams of help and support across the creative landscape.
So in terms of the numbers of people that you can accommodate straight away, what are we looking at?
So we are really open, and we have no cap on numbers that we can accommodate and help and support. There'll be different streams of support. We'll be supporting entrepreneurs in different ways that works for them. There isn't really a cookie cutter system, as we at UVA Accelerate don't operate in that way. But we encourage all creatives from across the continent to please connect in, make contact with us, and as soon as we formally launch all the initiatives that are available, we hope to connect in with as many of you as possible.
Tell me a little bit more about this cluster. What kind of creatives are we looking at in your mind at the moment?
So we really are looking at a broad-based approach with creatives from all the different creative sectors, and we are not looking to box it in or in any way exclude any of the creatives. But if you think about film, music, fashion, gaming, animation, design, and digital arts, maybe that will just give you some indication of where the scope lies.
I mean, we have content creators now on social media platforms. Do they form part of that as well?
Very much so, absolutely. And we welcome those content creators, particularly those that are doing what has always been done in a new, novel, and creative and innovative way.
Okay, and we're going to leave it there, but sounds very, very exciting, very new age, and we wish you the best of luck. And we'll catch up with you once you've launched and the first creative batch has been onboarded.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you.
Great talking to you. Thanks so much indeed. All right, so that was Lara Rosmarin, who's the head entrepreneur development at UVA Accelerate, and they've come together with the UNDP to create this creative hub project, which sounds very fascinating, Asanda. I mean, do we count? Are we creatives?
We are. And we definitely have tech at the center of everything we do, so we definitely would fit in there.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, maybe we'll get an invite.
All right, so what's up now? I think we have a package.
In a recent gathering at the T20 high-level conference in Pretoria, South Africa's International Relations and Cooperation students who are part of the South African Institute of International Affairs, or SAIIA, shared their insights on Africa's economic challenges and the pressing issues facing its youth. As South Africa prepares to host the G20 summit this year, the SAIIA youth delegation discussed key solutions for addressing these challenges and advancing the continent's development. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has the details.
Given the critical importance of 2025 for Africa, with South Africa hosting the first ever African G20 and the African Union as a newly admitted G20 member, expectations are that the summit will provide an opportunity and platform to advance the continent's growth, democracy, and security in global decision-making. Taking place under the theme Solidarity, Equality, and Sustainability, South Africa is leading in taking Africa's voice to the G20 summit, including its young pioneers who have provided some solutions on how to revive Africa's economic growth. Speaking to Channel Africa, Aspile Magata is putting her money on tourism.
I think firstly we should look at it from a tourism perspective, understanding that we have member states coming from different parts of the world, and not just in Africa or Europe, but also in different continents. So look at it from a tourism perspective. How can we also improve our infrastructure? How can we attract foreign direct investment to come to our country and invest in that sort of part of South Africa?
However, she raised concerns that the discussion that took center stage at the T20 high-level meeting did not involve financial experts.
And also, very importantly, in such discussions, we cannot only come as policymakers. This is when we involve economists. This is when we involve people in finance to say, how can we strategize in this G20? As much as we policymakers and decision makers, there are, of course, some niches that we need other people's expertise to be able to assist us in this regard.
Taylor Ngumalo has an issue with African resources being exploited by the West and the $700 billion of debt owed by African nations, calling for youth upskilling, empowerments that will eliminate aid dependence.
First and foremost, because we also have an issue with accessibility to financial to resources as African countries, and it's not that we don't have them; we do have them. It's just that resources are taken out and they're being sent to other countries. They're being refined and then they come back as products. So I really believe that we should skill young people, and I really believe that with that upskilling we can decrease the debt numbers. Because 700 billion in debt as Africa is a big number. I'm even ashamed to say that.
She says young people are not just folding their arms, but are not getting necessary support from the elderly who have run their races.
Young people are taking the initiative. It's not that they're not. And I think what is important to note is that in us trying to take initiative, we do need assistance from older people. And it's because the people that can give us power, there's generations in between. For example, the people sitting in the panel, there's 2 generations in between us, and we have to ask them for resources. Sometimes they won't understand because we're living in 3 generations, difference. So I really believe that if we can be upskilled, we have plans for resources that can be introduced and that can be implemented, and we can live off our own funds and our own money. We don't have to depend on foreign aid.
Channel Africa also spoke to Basetsane Pitso, who ignited the debate about older people resolving challenges faced by the youth in Africa, linking youth development to entrepreneurship and small, medium and micro enterprises, positioning these as critical tools for economic participation and innovation.
Because conversely, our parents can't solve the problems that we are currently facing, and thus it needs a youth approach. So when we look at the youth approach, we need to think entrepreneurship, we need to think SMMEs. And when we look at that, we need to think about how do we bring ourselves from looking outside of the box to say, I'm not only South African, but I'm African. So we do need the continental free trade to allow ourselves to say youth startups should be at the forefront of funding, and they should get access to those resources that will allow themselves to establish those businesses so that they can lift each other as they rise.
Meanwhile, Bonono Nsaka highlighted some of the pressing challenges that African youth are confronted with.
Number 1,
anywhere in Africa is youth unemployment. All of us is youth unemployment. It's a really bad thing. And one of the things the speakers, panelists said is that we are finding ourselves having certain wars, having certain problems because of the youth is depressed. The youth is finding ways to make livings. So if there is not so much opportunities and spaces for the youth to develop themselves for employment, we will find ourselves having those problems that are never ending. So I think creation of the spaces and opportunities for the youth is literally a path towards combating all of these challenges that we're facing. Youth employment, that's where it's at.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
That's how we come to the end of our program today on this Tuesday, the 6th of May. We'll be back tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Yes, indeed. Have an awesome day, everyone. Peter Ndoro, Asanda, Beda checking out. News next with Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Looking at your top stories, explosions heard in Sudan's capital, Port Sudan, this morning, and the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program Strategy and Action Plan for 2026 to 2035 is taking place. Your latest news, greetings to our listeners. Multiple explosions